Welcome to the Writing Glitch. This is Cheri Dotterer, your classroom coach. I'm here today with Kirk Lunde. He is the tutor at Kirk's Tutoring. We're so glad to have you here today. But before we begin, Kirk, I want to introduce Disability Labs. We are committed to impact the journey of 20,000 teachers, which translates to about 3 million students by 2023, so they can reignite their passion for teaching. Our professional development series, which you are a part of, I might add, focuses on math and writing skills to help students in your classroom. These interventions improve students with and without disabilities. All students have the access to mathematics and writing skills. We also have an ebook called The Pizza Problem for $14.95. You can see the information in your show notes. The Pizza Problem introduces the concept of squares to students. Whether you are a teacher, an occupational therapist, that math problem uses vision to help develop conceptual knowledge and from kindergarten through 12th grade by increasing the complexity of student knowledge base and improving number sense. Now, Kirk, let's get on and have a conversation about writing and mathematics. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you today?
I am doing great. The reason I asked you on the show today, and I mentioned that you are part of the curriculum that we're taking,
Mhm.
is what is it that that attracted you to the things that John Lee and I are doing? Now, I'm hosting you here on the Writing Glitch, but you're part of Disability Labs and you're really taking the math course, which isn't necessarily directly related to the Writing Glitch. This is more about the writing on this show. But I wanted to have you on here because I know writing impacts the kids, but what was it that drew you in to John Lee and what we're doing with Tier 1 interventions?
Okay. To answer that question, we have to go back to my previous career. I was a pediatric respiratory therapist who worked in large hospitals, pediatric centers, mostly in intensive care units, either the NICU or the PICU. I really was only focused on helping children get better when they were sick. Um, After my wife and I adopted two medically complex boys, I moved away from that work environment and I started working um, in indoor air quality, which uh, there was a there was a stint as an asthma educator in the middle there. I ended up in an indoor air quality company because I found out as I got out of the ICUs there are lots of reasons for people to get sick, and a lot of them have to do with their homes and what's going on in their lives and external things. Fast forward a little while, a couple years, I am on an alternative path to become a special education teacher. And one of my sons becomes very ill with a disease we didn't know at the time was Crohn's disease. And it took us over 9 months to get a diagnosis. And I ended up homeschooling my son because he was too sick to go to school. And so I ended up into the world of education coming from the world of healthcare and realizing along that journey that there are lots of things that impact students' learning as well as their health. Sometimes it overlaps, but a lot of times it doesn't. And the things we see in classrooms are a reflection of the whole student. So there may be some healthcare issue or some medical issue or some allergy issue that is preventing the student from learning or performing well academically. I guess schools are more, my opinion is schools are only concerned about academic performance. They're not really concerned about children. And they're not set up to be concerned about children. What drew me to you and John Lee is you are also combining the OT stuff, all that other stuff that's going on outside of the classroom with John Lee's very cool math stuff in the classroom to find a new way for all students to become successful. And that is obviously the goal. That's what we all want. I think you guys are just doing it better than anybody else that I've seen so far.
Well, thank you. And gosh, you're making me think back to my early days as an occupational therapist. I started out in the hospital too. I don't know if you knew that. I started out in acute care and I was working on the stroke team.
Mm,
Mo- Moved to long-term care stroke
mhm,
team and then home care where I had just about everything. And
right.
one of the things that I hated was orthopedics. But give me anything about neurology and I was just thriving and I could help those people no matter what their age was. Did a lot of environmental modifications.
Mm,
I really understand what you're talking about as far as the air purification. And I want to pause there and really like delve into that a little bit because I really believe that the air quality is going to impact the writing because it impacts their ability to concentrate. Well,
absolutely.
so what are some things about air quality that maybe a parent can address at home, but then again take back into the school? What are some of the things that you're seeing that are impacting learning as far as air quality goes?
Okay, there's too much variability for me to say anything about what's going on at home, but air quality isn't just temperature, humidity, and the amount of dust. There's more to air quality than that. Also, allergens, I would say most people who have allergies probably don't even know it. And that in your that affects your sleep quality. Are you sleeping well, or are you not getting through all of your sleep cycles because your allergies are interrupting your ability to breathe? Very complicated stuff. I would say, as an institution, public schools generally do a very bad job of monitoring air quality. And the indoor air quality of public schools, usually they monitor temperature. That's about it. And where I live outside of Atlanta, we're lucky to have working HVAC system. Quite honestly, 5 years ago, most of the schools did not have functioning HVAC systems. But so I would say the air quality in a school classroom or in the hallways or in the locker rooms and cafeteria, that can directly affect how students, and I'm going to just globally say perform academically. Obviously, you're focusing on writing, but I honestly don't know that connection between of a connection directly between indoor air quality and writing other than it can affect your nervous system. Again, we're talking about allergies. We're talking about making it more difficult to concentrate, uh, making it more difficult to retain information because of the air that you're breathing. So I don't know if I can answer your question directly, but there's a long-winded answer of some kind.
No, that's great. So one of the things that you mentioned there was a really good HVAC system that is working well. My understanding of the HVAC system is it pulling the particles out of the air and replacing them with really good air quality. Is that am I understanding the HVAC system
Well,
theory
that's
general?
the theory, but unless your HVAC system was designed to do that and also designed to bring in fresh air from outside. uh, So for
That's
decades,
balance.
we did not design HVAC systems well. We didn't bring in enough fresh air. We were recycling air over and over again, and the filters were not of a high enough quality to actually remove stuff from the air. We can get big particulates, but smaller things were just being recycled over and over again. Again, the school district where I live, when they were going back to school after the pandemic, they out of 130 schools, only 7 had the filters that were MERV 13 that will pull all the viruses and bacteria out of the air that would capture that. 7 out of 130, because the other ones were built before that was the standard. So if
Okay.
the school building is more than 15 years old, it's probably not giving you clean air.
There you go, parents. Something for you to think about. And I know that means that your mills are going to go up for your property taxes, but having a newer building is beneficial to help with that whole HVAC cycle. So we have an HVAC cycle, an HVAC system that's working efficiently. We've got kids in the classroom who are getting fresh air because they're pulling fresh air in from the outside. The particulates are getting expelled as people are breathing and moving around. Dust particles are getting attracted to that system. So the air quality is decent.
Okay.
One of the trying to create a scenario here where what are some of the things that you've noticed in that field that are also impacting kids? Now, I'm gonna try and fast forward to, like, where you are today, and my question here is, what are some of the things and some of the struggles that you're seeing with your students? Could it be related to the HVAC? Maybe not. Could it be related to their inability to understand the concepts of math and writing and where they stand in their understanding of conceptual knowledge? What are you seeing in general with kids with learning? That was a
Okay.
long-winded question for a simple
I see a lot of anxiety. I see a lot of self-image issues, but related to the writing, any student that struggles with writing for whatever reason is going to struggle with mathematics because they are always required to write their answer and show their work. And maybe in high school, you can do everything on a computer or keyboard of some kind. In elementary school, all students are required to show their work. And if you have a visual processing issue or some dysgraphia based from whatever issue, I'm not a dysgraphia expert, but students who don't like to write or who struggle to write will struggle in math because math requires a lot of writing of abstract things. If you don't understand the math or if you're not strong in your conceptual understanding of math, and so that you can write the number 214 and know exactly what that means, you are going to struggle to show your work. A lot of my students can do the math in their heads, but they can't put it on paper, and they're being penalized for that inability. If they were tested orally or assessed orally, they would do very well. But since their assessments are on paper, they struggle. One of the things that I do that my students really is I scribe for my students. I will read them problems, they will solve the problems, and I'll write down the answers. And parents, if homework is a battle, particularly math homework, if the kitchen table is a crying field, just take the writing away. Just if you do nothing else, just do that. Say, okay, I will write everything. You just have to talk me through it. That will reduce this. And nobody likes this.
Mm-mm,
You know?
mm-mm. No, and you mentioned something, and it totally has now left my mind about something that you said. It's something that John Lee and I talk about frequently, and that is that it's the understanding what they're supposed to be writing down. Like, they know the answer, you don't know how to get there, and some of that what I'm learning from John Lee is that they don't understand numeracy and magnitudes of numbers, and they don't understand the foundation of counting.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons. Yes, absolutely.
And I noticed that you do a lot of social media. So if you are listening to this, head over to Kirk's Tutoring, especially on Instagram. He does a lot of really good Instagram posts that'll help spark your thinking about the numeracy cycle and the conceptual understanding of numbers and counting. And I enjoy listening and reading some of the posts that you create. So thank you for doing that.
I forgot that this was a podcast. When I was putting my fists together, nobody's going to be able to see. Oh, I said when I said the kitchen table is a crying field, no struggles. Don't fight with your children over homework. Homework isn't that important. That's what that's the visual that you missed.
Yep, putting your fists together like you're fighting. Yes. There is a visual component. There is also on YouTube that we do share the visual as well.
Okay.
So, what are some of the strategies that you help the kids with math that are struggling to get it down on paper? Can you share one or two techniques that you're doing with your students to help get past that transition of not understanding the concept, being able to say it orally, but then to get it down on paper and reduce the anxiety in the process?
Well, what I do, and I don't have the magic bullet for everybody, but I teach my students a one model for drawing math problems, drawing numbers. And the model is based on Montessori math, where a unit or a one is a dot, a 10 is a line, and 100 is a square. So that would be 10 tens. And then 1,000 is a rectangle. So it's 100 across and 10 up, or 10 across and 100 up. And if they can, and it doesn't have to be neat, and you can use graph paper if you want it to be neat, if you're a perfectionist, or you can use a ruler if you want it. It doesn't have to be neat, but it's a system of very simple symbols to represent quantities that they can use, where we're not doing everything's a straight line or a dot. And if you have struggle with straight lines, because I can't draw a straight line, you can use graph paper or you can use a straight edge to do this, or you can just, what I do is accept it not being neat. And that is so, instead of using complex area models or ladder methods for doing multiplication, you can just draw a picture with lines and dots. And it's a simpler model that students can use to visualize what's going on. The- But
You're
again,
taking away complexity, making it simple by making it a simple picture.
exactly. And if you can count by groups of 100 and tens and ones, once you draw the picture, you just count and the answer is correct. If you count it correctly, you get the right answer every time. But again, that doesn't work for everybody. But instead of writing numbers, which are incredibly abstract, you can actually draw a symbol to represent the number, and you can see what's going on with the math. You make the math more visual versus numbers on a worksheet that will mess up students much more than a picture of something. Because if you see a picture, you can count it.
Mhm. I believe that is the way that the caveman did it. If that's going back to early writings, they did things by slashes.
Yeah, pictographs, tally marks. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. And I like the way we group things with tally marks, where like it's four and then we cross it to make a five, so that there's that picture of a group of five. And that is really easier, much easier for kids to understand and see. That's one of the reasons that I think John Lee and I mesh together, is because my belief is that visual processing is the foundation of being able to process what it is that you're learning. Yes, you have to pair it with the auditory, but I believe that the visual and understanding what might be going on with the vision
Mhm.
is one of the sources of kids really struggling with learning. There's more to vision than just simply looking at a piece of paper, but I hope that I've been able to share some things with you
Oh, yeah.
that have had you thinking about that, like, when you're
Abs-
moving to look up at the board and look back down at the paper and everything looks bounces all over the place, there could be something wrong with the system in your head and your neck called the vestibular system that is not making things work well together and your eyes have to catch up. So that's one of the things that we talk about. There's also so many other things that are underlying
Mhm.
that the primitive reflexes. I think we've talked a little bit about those in the past in conversations that we've had, that sometimes just changing the way a child sits on the chair will make a big difference in their ability to pay attention in class.
Alright.
Do you remember that conversation?
I
It's
do.
recent.
I want to stop right here to let everybody know because you have a variety of courses at disability labs. What we are talking about right now is the tier one intervention course. I don't know if you talk about these in other courses, but that's the course that I'm taking. I've been a math tutor for 14 years. I've been a tutor for 14 years, a math tutor for 10 years, and I am learning stuff from this tier one intervention course that is amazing.
Well,
And
thank you. Thank
um,
you.
if you are a parent out there and not a teacher, I recommend, especially if you're a homeschooling parent, I recommend this course because we talk about more what I mentioned before. It's bringing in all of the other stuff that affects how students learn. I don't care about academic performance. I care about how students learn and I want them to learn the best way that they can, or I want them to learn with as few problems and challenges as possible, and I want them to be happy. The information in this tier one strategies course, yeah, there's strategies for teaching math, but there's also all this other stuff that Sherry brings in terms of other systems of sensory systems. That's the word. Man, I need more coffee. Other senses that we have more than five senses, and all of those affect how students learn. And we need to provide a learning environment that is optimized for each student, and each student's brain is different. If you're a homeschooler, you have the best opportunity to try to understand how your student learns because kids don't know how they learn. They just they know what's easy and they know what's not. As a homeschooling parent, you can set up your homeschooling environment to meet your child's needs so that they can be successful. Now, public schools or even private schools in general, teachers can do that to some extent, but they can't individualize it for every student if they have 25 or 30 students in their classroom. So you can do things that will help every student, but are you going to help every student as much as possible? I don't think you can, but that's just me, you know.
That's our goal, is to try and create strategies that will meet 95% of the students. If we can get up to 99 or 100% in that classroom, that's one of our targets.
Mhm.
Uh, I mentioned the vestibular system, and one of the things that I suggest to teachers, if they've got a kid who is having trouble following the board and following the paper, is give them the whatever's on the board on a piece of paper and put it next to them on their desk so they don't have to look up. They're looking side to side. Now, that might be a different issue with their vision, but it takes away moving the head.
Right.
What is another strategy that you have taken away from what Jonalee and I are teaching that you've been able to implement successfully as a tutor?
Oh, stop photocopying on white paper.
Oh, I love that.
I still have way too much white paper, but yeah, non-white paper is easier to read. And we talk about newsprint has never been white. It's always been gray. There's a reason for that. I didn't know that till you taught me that. Yeah, I'm photocopying on off-white paper. And I don't know that's made a huge difference because what I photocopy is mostly games, but I think that's a smart strategy. Why do something that we know is not the best strategy?
I like that you have taken that to heart and are following that. Ask the student what their favorite color to read off of is by having choices. So I actually have a paper shelf where I have one of every pastel color that I can find. There's multiple shades of yellow, there's multiple shades of purple, blue, and green and orange. And believe it or not, there are some kids who really like it pale, and there are other kids who really want it dark. But
Mhm,
as long as they can see that contrast with the black type,
mhm.
go for it.
Yeah.
Now, navy blue and black is not gonna work. It's not gonna be a good contrast.
No, you're not gonna yeah, it can't be
Mm.
too dark. But yeah.
But I had one child who was a middle schooler, and his favorite color was the darker orange. It was almost like Halloween orange,
Wow, interesting.
and he wanted it that dark, and his handwriting improved when it got that dark. If I used the paler, it was the contrast or whatever it was about it. I don't know, maybe he was just a Flyers fan. I don't know. We don't know why.
Yeah, we don't
Um,
know. We can't be inside other people's heads. But we can investigate and we can ask questions.
Yeah.
And I think it's our obligation to do,
Yeah, so have you used any of the other colors other than, like, an off-white yellowy tone?
yeah, I've gone into the pastel purples and pastel pinks. Yeah. You buy the pack of pastel colors and you use what you buy.
And
Oh,
and what are you finding? Are girls picking the pink just because it's pink? Or are you explaining to them which one's the best to one that you can see?
oh no, I give them options and they pick whichever color they want. So I'm not you have to realize I am a very chaotic person. My my general strategy is to give students lots of choices and then follow them wherever they go. That's I do
That's
that
Montessori.
mathematically. I do that with the colors of papers. I do that with the games. Here are 3 games. Which one would you like to play?
Mhm.
So that's my overall strategy. And a lot of teachers don't use that strategy, or a lot of tutors don't use that strategy. They will prepare a lesson plan and then that's what you have to do. And
Mm.
that's not me. I would rather follow the child wherever they want to go because I think if they have ownership of what's going on, they're going to be much more engaged and they're going to remember it better. But that's why my tutoring strategy doesn't work for everybody. And not all parents like what I do. And that's fine because I do my thing and my thing isn't for everybody. That's all right.
And my thing isn't for everybody, and John Lee's thing isn't for everybody, but we do have a passion to help inspire those teachers and parents to think differently.
Hmm.
Kids can think differently. And I teased you a little bit about girls picking pink paper, more selfish reasons than not, because I noticed that sometimes the boys were picking the blue green and the girls were picking the pink purple.
Hmm.
But then when I stopped and I said, look at it and tell me which one helps you see the work better,
Right.
it changed.
Hmm. Because you changed they were expecting you to want to do gender roles, but that's not what you wanted. And so once you explained, I want you to be able to see this better, they came at it from a different point of view.
And I wanted to stop and emphasize that here for the listeners. If you are going to change the color of the paper, you're going to want to do it based on what the child can see best, not hit a gender bias from them. So make sure that you qualify that and explain that you're trying to make it easier for them to learn. So
Now, the
go
other thing
ahead.
that I do that not directly related to writing, but I think teachers and homeschoolers who are watching this, every child has sensory needs. Everybody has sensory needs. This isn't just children. And if they have an unmet sensory need, that will interfere with their ability to learn. And Right now, I've got a fidget in each hand. It's because that's just on my desk, there are probably 20 fidgets. And if you are in a corporate environment and you go to any kind of training, you walk into the boardroom or the training room or wherever, and there are fidgets on the table for the adults. That's been going on for years. Why would we not let students have fidgets in the classroom or at home?
They're absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. Now, a friend sent me this thing called a calm strip. I don't know if that's that calm strip. There we go.
Okay.
This to me, this is worthless. I just keep it as that's not enough. That's not enough.
It
Um,
looks like a
it's a little bit of really
file.
fine sandpaper that's been
It's
painted.
like a nail file.
Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, it's like a little emery board thing. It's flimsy, but it's almost smooth. I can barely feel it, and maybe that's just because I'm older and my hands aren't quite as soft as other hands. But yeah, I have a gear one that I can spin around. And the secret is to find things that are quiet.
Mhm.
Um, but most of my students, I give them little for birthdays and Christmas. I give them little tins of thinking putty. So it's like slime, but it doesn't make a mess. But it's silent. It's a big thing. Another thing that helps, I am sitting on a cushion right now. I have bitty cushion right there. Right now, I'm not using my bitty cushion. Something just to change what I'm sitting on. If you rubber bands between the legs of a desk chair or any chair that the students can bounce their feet on, we're meeting the sensory needs of the students. Sometimes students get overwhelmed and you have to give them a break and they need a sensory break and they can go to a quiet place or go outside and, walk around in the sunshine and fresh air. Diff- have to be aware of when students are struggling because their sensory needs are not being overwhelmed is the most easily recognized one, but underwhelmed also is an issue. So sometimes they need to be stimulated a little bit. One thing that has worked for some of my students, again, nothing that I am saying is magical, just background alpha wave vibrations or frequencies to stimulate the alpha waves. That can help some students focus. I had other students who find it very irritating and totally opposite effect of but background music that doesn't have words, instrumental music that can help students to focus and to remember things better. That's the goal. I'm using learning and remembering interchangeably, even though they're two different things. Remembering is putting something into your short term and then your midterm memory. And then with repetition, it goes into your long term memory. You can remember things, but you don't learn it until you've experienced it a number of times. But you want to optimize each interaction with what you want the students to learn.
I love that this has become a conversation about sensory processing because I believe that is one of the things that many teachers and parents hear about, but don't really understand.
Mhm.
So, thank you for utilizing some of those techniques. I believe from things that you and I've talked about in the past that a lot of your students are neurodivergent. Neurodivergent kids absolutely need those sensory stimuli. My neurodivergent daughter rips her cuticles to shreds unless she has a fidget, if she is in a situation where she has to sit still. Sometimes it was annoying as a parent. You're supposed to be sitting still in church, but if
Yeah.
she didn't, we'd leave church with bloody nails. And, and I'm like, okay. And it was quiet. So she would just sit there and have something in her hand, move it back and forth. And she would come away from that session and that sermon and tell me like almost verbatim what it said.
Right.
Where if she was picking at her cuticles,
She wasn't hearing anything.
she wasn't hearing anything.
Yeah.
So, I want parents to hear that. I want teachers to hear that. Sometimes that fidget is absolutely essential
Hmm.
for a student to even absorb what you are saying to them.
Hmm. Now, as a tutor, I see most of my students after they've been in school for 7 hours or so. So they have been not active except for perhaps recess or PE. Um, and so what to have a student sit for an hour of math after they've been in school all day is unreasonable. So as a parent, before you attempt homework, kids need some downtime and they need to move. Their downtime can't be in front of a TV and then you expect them to turn out or video games and then you expect them to turn off the video games and do homework. It's a break from school, but that's not what their body needs. That may be what their brain needs in terms of dopamine, but their bodies need to move before you can start doing homework.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I like the vertical 8 and the handstand flip is
Mhm.
it forces kids to move and it forces them to deep breathe.
Yes.
And and if anybody listened to my podcast episode, my State of the Union episode, I mentioned conscious breathing and 5 different ways to facilitate conscious breathing with your students. So go back and listen to season 1, episode 1 if you haven't listened to that. It's at the very end. What a conversation this has turned out to be. Thank you for your what you're doing down in Georgia for the students in that area. And thank you for sharing your wisdom on social media and getting the message out there that we don't always learn the same way. So thank you very much for doing that. It has been a pleasure having you here today. Is there a way that people can get a hold of you, Kirk?
Kirk's Tutoring website, kirkstutoring.com, no apostrophe. Or is there? Probably not. But as you said, on Instagram, I am at Kirk's underscore tutoring or search for Kirk the Tutor on Instagram. I think I have to say your definition of wisdom is very loose if you think that I have provided any wisdom, but thank you. Thank you for having me. And uh, would just say that the movements that you have talked about that I have seen already are essential. You get crossing midline movements and whole body movements. They don't have to be exaggerated, doesn't have to be aerobic, but movement activates the brain and gets the brain ready to learn. Yes. Listen to that part of her podcast episode, season 1, episode 1.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Hey, listeners, go be awesome. Go be brilliant. You were put here for such a time as this. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a bunch for being here. Thank you for being here, Kirk.
Oh, thank you for having me.